Hazer listeners, Love is Blind, Season 5, Pods. Let's watch.
I have more.
Go for it.
Sometimes when you shower, I'll probably just want to, peek.
Peek? Ain't no free shows around here, girl. You can't just be peeking in the shower.
I like to peek.
I'll have to charge you by...
Okay, yeah. Maybe she's just being cute, but that is kind of interesting. I don't know what it says, but it might say something. It could be a kink, and that is, sex is weird. That's what I always say. People ask me, how come we do this? I mean, like, human sexuality is weird. That's just stuff, and we should embrace it. And there's not a lot, because people often have these explanations like, well, people have foot fetishes because of this reason. It's like, well, it's not easy to research that. It's a story that we're telling ourselves, but there's not a ton of data to support these points of view. So we just have to go, well, humans are kind of odd, and we have our theories or ideas of maybe why this happens, but we just don't really know. So always be skeptical if someone says like, oh, if someone has a spanking fetish, it's because of this neuron and this, this psychological or this child experience. It's likely that the claim they're making has no data to support what they're saying, and they're just saying a story. So there's that, but there's also hint of what she is saying, and I think I'm also incorporating this into my burgeoning conceptualization and vibe about her personality of sneakiness. And that even could have been involved in the infidelity, now that I think about it, where she... So this is obviously a huge stretch, but I've treated a lot of people who have this issue, and there are pros and cons to it. Like, another thing that I'll hear from people with this trait is they will say that they have fantasies about being a private investigator, or they like to stay up really late at night because they know everyone else is asleep, or they have fantasies about burglarizing homes even though they don't really want to steal things, or they might shoplift kind of for fun, for the thrill of it and the sneakiness of it, or they might carry around with them a little trinket or a naughty underwear that no one can see and no one ever would see, not even their partner, but they just like that feeling of having a secret that no one else knows. And it does fit with some of her personality of that potential self-hatred that is present at times. The way that she sort of, as he was parentizing, she was childizing. It is kind of in that camp. And it's something that isn't often talked about, this issue. Like I said, there can be pros and cons. The pro could just be fun stuff like consensual peeking in showers. But the downside is that the individual could actually deal with things in a hidden way. They can deal with their anger, their pain, their resentment through hidden measures instead of going straight to the person and saying, I'm upset with you. They have to do these other things. And they might even do it unconsciously. Huge stretch, but I'm just saying, it just sort of occurred to me, so I thought I'd talk about it.
Maybe the OCD thing. Like, I have to have things in certain, places sometimes. Like, sometimes if things are not aligned well, it's like sometimes I like to go around and, set things in the right place. So
that's not necessarily OCD. It doesn't even sound like OCD, and we need to stop using the term OCD because it is demeaning to people who have full-blown OCD, because full-blown OCD is awful. It is not just being neat. Full-blown let me just briefly give one presenting case of OCD, fictionalized case. Someone comes in my office and they report to me that they cannot leave the house before they check the gas stove 20 times, and they also make sure that the water pipes aren't leaking, and they also make sure that their outfit is perfect, and they've washed their hands 10 times, and they've put on some gloves, and then as they're walking out the door, they something happens, like a wind happens and a leaf hits them and they run back inside. They're in total terror all the time. It's not just like being wimpy, it's often associated with like wimps, like the germs and like you're like you're weak or something. It has nothing to do with weakness. It has nothing to do with being a wimp. It is a condition of the brain and potentially of trauma that is overwhelming and uncontrollable and completely debilitating. The presenting case I gave wasn't very good. Another one is that an individual is terrified of God and going to hell. And they end up praying for 15 hours out of 16 hours because they're trying to get through the perfect prayer so that God will not hurt them and the people that they love. This is a form of OCD. It's not a common form, but it is common enough that I've seen it before. And they will not eat because they believe that they can't eat until they get through this prayer. They will punish themselves. They will not talk to people. And when they do come across other people, they'll be like, no, you gotta, no, you don't understand. Like, God. It sounds psychotic. It sounds delusional, right? And it has that look to it. It's extreme. That's not just being organized. I am organized. The word is being organized, or being a neat freak, I suppose, or conscientiousness is another term that we use in our field. Conscientiousness has a lot to do with a lot of things, but there's a lot of other terms. You could even potentially use the word compulsive, maybe, but do not use the term OCD. I don't blame people for doing it because they have been misinformed by TikTok and the internet. It's not their fault, but don't say that anymore. Don't say, oh my God, I'm so flighty, I'm so ADHD. If something has a D at the end, OCD, ADHD, this is a disorder. It is a massive problem. It ruins people's lives. People kill themselves because they have these disorders. Don't do that. Obviously, get the proper care, and you can, have it managed, sometimes with medication and psychotherapy, both. Anyway, so it is not just a minor kind of quirk. It's not quirky.
So you're a neat freak.
Not a neat freak, but sometimes, I'll go around and I'll be adjusting things just because things seem a little bit off. And I'm like, oh, that picture frame is crooked. And every time I look at it, I just see. Get
those Velcro things, those command strips, I think, and you put it on the painting on the bottom, and it'll never get real nice. And sometimes your house is not level, so you gotta compromise because even though the picture is level, it'll look off because the framing of the house has been shifting.
Like, I feel like
I'm painting it worse.
The need to mention something like this means it's bad.
I feel like I'm painting it. I feel like I'm painting it worse than it actually is. I'm starting to question this connection that we're having. Honestly, didn't expect this out of you.
I will say, seeing this side of Aaliyah is very refreshing. She is a breath of fresh air, especially in relation to Uche, I think. I'd be curious how they work out, actually, because I think they're quite different in that way. They could really complement each other that way, but it could also, I don't know. Well, I guess we'll find out.
You're right. I haven't been saying what I fucking look like. Like, I like her a lot, dude. Like, I could see myself with her. I'm just like...
Yes or no, you would marry her right now?
Probably, bro.
You can't say probably with something like that.
I mean, truthful?
Bible.
I'd propose to her right now.
Good man.
So, we haven't seen much of Milton, and we haven't seen much of Milton and Lydia together. So hearing him say that he probably would propose to Lydia is not, we haven't seen the build up to that. So is the build up there and we just haven't seen it, or is something else going on here? Either this propensity to make quick decisions based on what's going on around you, or some desperation, or wanting to be on the show. Let's hope it's not the second one, but I'll assume that there was a build-up and we just weren't showing it because of editing.
And the thing that's crazy is that girl knows me so well through a wall. It's easy and it's fun.
Okay, so Izzy is talking with Johnnie about his process and about how he really connected with Johnnie at first because of the emotional connection and the traumas, I guess, that they might have shared. People will call this trauma bonding. It's not technically trauma bonding. And you hear trauma bonding, think of Stockholm Syndrome, where a captive ends up bonding with their captor. There's a well-understood psychological process that some people will engage in when they're being imprisoned or tortured, that they will, as a way of coping, believe that the torturer, the captor, the abuser, is actually a really good person. And could understand how they would do that to cope, right? For two people to bond over trauma, we don't have a psychological term for that. Just say that phrase. Just say, they're bonding over their traumas. I wish people would do this more. Instead of saying gaslighting, say the person tricked me over time, or the person lied to me and tried to make me believe the lies. Just say that phrase. Just don't use the technical term, is the point. So for him, he's saying that in the beginning, they bonded over their respective traumas. And then with Stacy, didn't really have that, so he didn't really feel it. But then at some point with Stacy, he felt like this is easy. I feel like we know each other. There's a familiarity there or something. I feel like she's a better match. I feel much more connected to her. And yeah, that is interesting. And that is something to think about. I've talked with clients about this, that when you're dating and you're trying to find somebody, and you're having trouble, or you've had, some people will be confused. They'll be dating a lot of people and they'll be like, what's wrong with me? I don't understand. Are my standards too high? Am I looking in the wrong places? And sometimes what I find, and I don't know this, but observing them over time, what we find in the story that we build is that it just took a long time to find the right person. One, it is kind of a luck game and also a numbers game, because if you only date 3 people in 10 years, then the chance of meeting that very compatible person is much lower, right? So anyway, with these individuals, I would find that when we look back, it wasn't that they had too high expectations or they were looking in the wrong place. It was they just hadn't found that person yet. And when they found that person, it was easy. Romance is weird, so everyone has their own preferences and there's different stories about it. But for some people, when they finally meet their person, it's just easy, is the way that people will say it. There are occasional conflicts and there are some personality differences, but it's not constant, right? It's not a constant fight. Now, for some people, they thrive within that debate or that interface between differences, right? So, it's different. But the way that he's talking, he sounds like one of those individuals where it's like, at least in this phase of his relationship with Stacy in relation to Johnnie, he's like, it just feels easy. It's natural. She knows me. I don't have to, I get that feeling that we know each other. And that can be a very comforting feeling, right? That you're not having to explain everything. You don't have to struggle to be understood. They just get you. And that can be, it's just really great, very comforting.
But you realize I had the same thing with Chris, right?
I don't know anything about you and Chris.
Well, it was exactly you and Stacy. Me and Chris talked about everything. Like, I could leave here with Chris.
I think what Johnnie is saying is, yeah, but me and Chris had that easy relationship, but it was not the right thing for me because that's a lesser form of relationship. It is easy and boring and lacking depth, I think is what Johnnie is getting at based on other things that they've talked about. And okay, for you, Johnnie, that is your process, the priorities that you have, but Izzy has a different priority or a different way of looking at it. And you can't debate this with your partner. People will do this, and I think it's natural to do that. The more normal situation in real life is when someone is breaking up with you and you might try to debate with them. It's like, but I don't understand. How come this? And sure, maybe, because essentially what you're trying to do is you're presenting your PowerPoint of convincing information to convince your partner to not break up with you. That's essentially what's happening. And that doesn't make a lot of logical sense, right? Because if they're breaking up with you, they're breaking up with you. Whatever reasons that two of you can come up with, they're just not feeling that love and feeling anymore, and they're presenting, I guess, reasons why. If you want to debate the reasons why, just because you just say, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense, I'm not trying to convince you to be with me, but that one is weird to me. Or you just want to be sad or whatever, But the point is that people will do this a lot, and I find it to be counterproductive, but normal that people will do that. It's a desperate situation. So I think that's what she's doing. She's like, let me tell you the reason why you're wrong so that you will be with me, which, doesn't make a lot of sense, but very normal that people will do that.
Like, I could leave here with Chris and I know exactly what our life would look like. I know exactly what it would look like. And I know how he would treat me. And like, we did connect on a lot of stuff. Like, we did. We laughed the entire time we were in the pods. But I wasn't falling in love with him. If I chose him.
And imagine a world in which he's like, you make a good point. You know what? You're right. I shouldn't be with Stacy. I should be with you. What would that say about him? Right? He presumably has thought about this a lot and is coming to this pod meeting having really established some very firm things. And let's say that with her persuasion, he's just like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you and not the person that I was absolutely certain was better for me. That doesn't bode well for anybody involved with Izzy, right? So it just illuminates the what do you call it? The fruitlessness of this activity for people.
Chris would have been repeating the past few relationships where I go into something that feels like it makes sense and I wouldn't get hurt because my heart's not there. Did I feel way more secure in my relationship with Chris? 100%. But I didn't come here to feel secure. I came here to break out of my pattern.
Yeah, I feel like that's been a theme with some of the cast members, which I'm trying to understand. And she just put it into words pretty clearly there. She's saying, yeah, I feel secure with Chris. And yeah, it's easy with Chris. But that has never worked for me in the past, so I'm trying to break out of that pattern. It's sort of like with Costanza, where things are going wrong and you're just like, well, I'm just gonna do everything opposite. That's not a strategy for survival or for happiness. Just doing everything opposite or picking a random thing to be opposite about doesn't necessarily mean the opposite outcome is going to happen, right? So I want to explore that with someone if they told that to me, because she's saying, basically, she just said, not basically, she just said, my goal is to find a person I feel insecure with, right? Let's rewind that.
Did I feel way more secure in my relationship with Chris? 100%. But I didn't come here to feel secure. I came here to break out of my pattern and to find someone that I feel like I connect with on another level that...
Okay, so I'm glad I let her finish. So yeah, on one hand, I guess if she's saying, yeah, there were people I felt secure with in the past, but I didn't really want to be with them. And I knew they would be pursuing me. And I was just kind of stringing them along because I was insecure too. And I don't want to do that again. Okay. And then the other thing that she's saying is, connecting on another level. So in the past, she would perceive that some relationships are easy, but they're distant. They're just casual. And I don't want to do that. I want to take a risk and actually find someone that I can be deeper with and someone who wants to be deeper with me, so that it's deeper, but it's also more risky. And I don't feel as secure because I'm taking a lot more risks. I'm more vulnerable. I think that's what she's saying. And if so, okay. Well, I don't know. I guess we'll see what Izzy says. I doubt Izzy's going to be like, you know what, I'm convinced. But you can have both. You can have having a new dating relationship be easy and feel natural and familiar doesn't mean that it's not going to go deep or that it isn't deep. The other thing is, and I've been saying this from the beginning, there are different types of people. And for me, and I'm guessing for you, a lot of you, you would want your relationships to be deeper. But we need attachment, and we need security, and we need attunement, and we need love and dedication and loyalty and familiarity and support and mutual giving. We need all those things. And there are plenty of happy people who live happy lives that don't prefer to go very deep very often. They like to be fun. They, after conflict with their partner, they actually can and would prefer to, quote unquote, sweep it under the rug. And of course, that's a term from my side of the fence of sweeping it under the rug is a bad thing. But for them, it would be letting it go. And, for me, I don't often talk about how that is a possible thing. And we're often talking about how we should be doing that when it's not humanly possible. But for some people, they still, for people on that side of the fence, they still need occasionally to face things, of course. But you can find, I've been saying this about Izzy and Stacy, is that it's possible that for them, they are on that other side of the fence. And if they manage it right, they can make it work right. And of course, on my side of the fence, we can imagine how there's pros and cons to this too. You can end up talking too often about things and really weighing your relationship down, pointing out all the different issues that need to be addressed and having it be intense and close and vulnerable and disclosing, but also very heavy and often negative and conflictual or threatening or scrutinizing or something. So that's the con, but the pro is that you are given a much greater chance of understanding each other and working things out and getting to know each other better. But, there's a lot of goals in life. There's a lot of different styles of relationship. So it's possible that for Izzy, he's like, yeah, I get what you're saying, Johnnie, but it's just not really what I want to do. I thought maybe I wanted to go deeper, but when presented, at least with two people, now, it's possible that for Izzy, his relationship with Johnnie isn't necessarily deeper. I mean, maybe it is in a certain way. It has more trauma that's discussed, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's deeper. It can mean that. I'm wondering if there's a culture of this season or a culture of the show or a culture of Houston or a culture of people this age that they have this heuristic of if we talk about our traumas and we cry about it, then we're going deeper. And certainly, absolutely possible, but that's not necessarily true. And you don't necessarily have to do that in order to go deeper, right? There's a lot of versions of satisfactory vulnerability exchange and getting to know each other and mutual dependence. There's a lot of different things that can come into play. So I just thought I'd comment on that too. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Playing fucking games or having fun. Like, this is what it's going to be like when shit gets hard in the real world. But like I said from the beginning, I want someone to choose me. And for me, it's you. If I don't live here with you and you don't live here with me, I'm always going to think about you for the rest of my life as a what if.
So, yeah, there's a lot of love songs that involve that sentiment, but when you say it out loud and not in a love song, it sounds creepy and stalkery. If you don't choose me, so on one hand, yeah, that's what true love is, right? If Stacy were to leave me today, I would think about her the rest of my life and wonder what if or whatever. Absolutely. So that indicates how much you love someone or how much you want to be with someone and how desperate you are to see if things will work out. But when she says it that way, it sounds like a threat. I don't think she means it that way.
And I think you're always going to feel that way about me too.
I'm not a fan of that last statement. Although I do understand it. I wonder if the viewers are not a fan of Johnny's at this point because of these kinds of statements. And sure, but also when you are in love, and maybe when you're young and in love, and they're all young to me, not that people my age don't have their idiocy, of course, or their foibles. Idiocy is a strong word. When you're in love, it's really hard, like for me, if Stacy were to break up with me and divorce me tomorrow, I would question whether she was off her rocker or not. I would probably say, what do you do? You know, even if she was suddenly very sure that the relationship was over. It's pretty awful to think about. I don't know why I chose this example, but I'm pretty sure that I would say something like that. I'd be like, no, don't, you're wrong. Stop it. You think you're right, but you're wrong, right? So that's normal to do. In this context, it's less justified because of the circumstances and the newness to their relationship, right? So the analogy isn't exactly applicable, but for her to, but people will say that, right? And to think it, I understand, but I'm not a fan of saying it. I don't think Izzy is going to be intimidated by that or brainwashed by that, but I'm guessing it's bothering Izzy. Although I don't know, maybe he's thinking about it, you know, and maybe Izzy's like, yeah, sure, maybe I will wonder what if, but it's a bigger what if to me if I don't go with Stacy or something like that. I don't know.
Ending things with me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I get it.
I'm sorry. And I wish you nothing but the best.
It's a little better than his breakup with Lydia. Yeah. At least when you see his nonverbal, there's clearly something weighing on him, the sadness. He's not great at verbalizing it. And then we're seeing Johnnie go, all right. And yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Johnnie was really fighting, giving it her best shot, and it didn't work. And so, yeah, okay. That's what I thought was going to happen. It makes me wonder about the Lydia breakup, because that one was a lot different than this. The Lydia breakup could have happened a lot sooner. You know, maybe it happened on the first day. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised, given Lydia's personality, if she would have, you know, rushed things potentially. And it also makes you wonder if Izzy could be honest about it. He'd be like, yeah, I don't really understand why Lydia was like coming at me hard, because we barely knew each other. So it was weird. Yeah. And I did end it with Lydia, but I don't understand why I would be like really sad about it, because there was nothing there to end. You know, we don't really know, because now we're seeing that there's more intensity and sadness on his part that didn't seem to be present at all when he dumped Lydia, right? I don't know. All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone, please take care of yourself, because you deserve it. You really, really, really do.